The courtroom did not feel like a room that morning. It felt like a confession chamber, heavy with unspoken sins, where even the marble walls seemed tired of holding secrets. Judge Adrian Vale sat at the bench, his posture calm, his face unreadable, but behind his eyes burned the unmistakable tension of a man who had spent his entire life judging others and now found the weight of judgment slowly turning toward himself. When the clerk announced, Case number 5821B, the people of the United States versus Adrian Vale, a murmur rippled through the gallery, because never in modern legal history had a sitting federal judge been tried in his own courtroom. Cameras were banned, but journalists filled every seat, pens trembling like weapons, ready to carve history into headlines. The charge was not simple corruption, it was far more poisonous, judicial manipulation leading to the wrongful conviction of 7 men over 18 years. 7 lives folded into prison numbers. 7 families broken quietly while the system congratulated itself for efficiency. The prosecution claimed Adrian Vale had altered sentencing language, influenced juries through carefully framed instructions, and buried exculpatory evidence under the guise of procedural irrelevance. Vale pleaded not guilty. Not with anger. Not with denial. But with silence. The lead prosecutor, Daniel Cross, rose slowly, every movement deliberate, like a man who understood the power of pause. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice sharp but controlled, "this case is not about mistakes. It is about intention. It is about a man who believed that order mattered more than truth." Cross pointed toward the bench, not aggressively, but precisely. And today, for the first time, that belief will be tested. Vale listened, hands folded, jaw clenched. He had once mentored Cross, taught him how to dismantle a witness without raising his voice, how to let silence do the violence. Now those same techniques were being turned against him. The irony tasted bitter. The first witness was Samuel Reed, a former construction worker who had spent 12 years in prison for an armed robbery he did not commit. He walked with a limp, the kind you earn from concrete floors and metal beds. "I lost my mother in prison," Reed said quietly. "She died thinking I was guilty. Judge Vale sentenced me." His eyes lifted, not accusing, not angry, just tired. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my life was taken legally." Cross submitted documents, emails, internal memos, margin notes written in Vale's handwriting. Phrases like jury confusion acceptable and collateral error tolerable for deterrence echoed through the room. Defense attorneys objected. Overruled. Again and again. The system Vale had mastered was now devouring him with perfect form. When it was time for the defense, Adrian Vale stood. He did not move to the podium immediately. He looked at the jury, 12 strangers holding decades of his legacy in their hands. "I never took a bribe," he said calmly. "I never falsified evidence. What I did was believe in containment." The word hung in the air. "I believed that chaos spreads faster than truth. I believed that if the system collapsed, innocent people would suffer even more." His voice cracked for the first time. "So I chose certainty over purity." Gasps filled the courtroom. The defense argued philosophy. The prosecution argued consequence. And between them sat the jury, drowning in the uncomfortable truth that justice is often a negotiation with fear. The trial stretched over weeks. More witnesses came, ex-detectives, former clerks, even a retired juror who testified that Judge Vale's instructions had subtly implied guilt before deliberations began. Piece by piece, a portrait emerged, not of a villain, but of a man who believed he was smarter than the law. Everything changed on day 19. A sealed file was introduced into evidence, Exhibit 47C, containing a suppressed forensic report that conclusively proved one defendant's innocence in a murder case from 14 years earlier. Vale's signature appeared at the bottom with a handwritten note. Release would destabilize public trust. The courtroom fell into a silence so deep it felt physical. That night, Vale did not sleep. He sat alone in chambers, staring at the city lights, replaying every sentence he had ever spoken from the bench. He realized then that justice does not rot loudly, it decays politely, under rules, under titles, under applause. Closing arguments arrived like a storm. Prosecutor Cross did not shout. He whispered, "The defendant will ask you to admire his intentions. But the law does not punish intention, It punishes harm. 7 men lost decades. That is not theory. That is bloodless violence. When Adrian Vale rose for his final statement, the room leaned forward. This was the moment, the DiCaprio-style monologue that would be quoted, dissected, remembered. "I wore this robe believing it made me clean," Vale said, voice trembling but strong. "I told myself that if I carried the burden, others would be safe. But I was wrong. I wasn't protecting justice. I was controlling it. And control is just fear with authority." He swallowed hard. "If you convict me, do it not because you hate me, but because you refuse to become me." The jury deliberated for 14 hours. 89:17 a.m. They returned. The foreperson stood. In case number 5821B, we find the defendant guilty on all counts. Vale closed his eyes. There was no outrage, no collapse, only relief. As the gavel struck, the sound echoed like a confession finally accepted. Outside, the headlines would scream. Inside, 7 names were cleared. 7 men walked free. Justice had not won cleanly, but this time, it had not lost quietly either.